And for all that there are some forming islands, there are a considerable number beneath the sea. So there are a whole lot of submarine arc, Aeolian Arc volcanoes. And you'll be interested to know that these have been explored in the last few years by the Italian geological world. And the trip was led by a GNS scientist, Dr. Cornel Durand. And Cornel will be talking this series in a few weeks. But that is a real feather in Cornel's cap to be asked by the Italians to come and lead an expedition exploring their submarine volcanoes. But he and colleagues at GNS Science, where we work, and also in North American institutions and European institutions, are really, Japanese as well, are really leading the world in the exploration of these submarine volcanoes. You can see there's a big blob of volcanic rock up where Rome is. We're not talking about, this is part of the Campanian Arc. So there are bits along this subduction front which have different names. This is the Aeolian Arc. Strictly speaking, Vesuvius is part of the Campanian Arc, though, here. This is a detail, again, now coloured, showing water depth here. The water in this part of the Mediterranean, or Tyrrhenian Sea, gets very deep, up to 3,700 metres. So this is oceanic crust on the seafloor, and the very deep sea. And you can see all these names. You probably can't see them out there, but all these features, all these individual volcanoes are named. This is Sicily here, Straits of Messina through there. This is a lovely image from a book that I've got, that was written by Harun Taziev, just simply called Volcanoes. And he published this book in 1961, and curiously, he's got a string of beautiful old engravings, and not one of them is credited. He doesn't actually state anywhere in the book where the engravings come from. He merely says that this is an engraving. But this happens to be the two craters of Vulcano on Lipari. Another similar image to the last one. The beauty about this is it's actually got the subduction zone dotted in. Here's Etna, and here's the Aeolian Arc, and Vesuvius up here. And a few images of Etna. I appealed to my Italian colleagues. We actually have a growing number of Italian scientists at GNS Science, and they very helpfully provided a number of these images. So Etna is huge. It rises to in excess of 3,000 meters above sea level, and it's very active. And these are just a few images of Etna in eruption. It's constantly in eruption within the last 6 months. This too is another subduction-related volcano, very like our volcanoes. I have been to Sicily, and I've been to this part of the world, but alas, it was so hazy and cloudy that I didn't see Etna at all. A few words. I just want to now think briefly and put the eruption in AD 79 that we're talking about in relation to Pompeii in context with a few historical points. You probably can't see it, I'll read it out. It was 123 years, this is AD 79, the eruption of Vesuvius. It was 123 years after the death of Julius Caesar, 109 years after the death of Cleopatra. It was 36 years after the conquest of Great Britain in 43 AD by Claudius, 17 years after a large earthquake in 62 AD. Now, this was a very significant earthquake, estimated to be about magnitude 7.5. And the damage from that is evident in Pompeii today. It was 3 years after the building of the Colosseum. And interestingly, it was a day after Vulcanalia, the festival of the Roman god of fire. How about that? And it happened, the actual eruption was the 24th to 25th of August, and it lasted less than 30 hours. And at the time, the emperor was the Emperor Titus. There you go. I didn't mention it, but the Roman Empire was founded 106 years before this eruption, and it ended with breakup into two parts, and then the rest 316 years later. So this is putting it in a kind of a historical context. Let's think about the eruption now. We know about it because it was recorded, and in particular it was recorded by Pliny the Younger. He happened to be the nephew of Pliny the Older. These are terms that we have placed on them. The older Pliny was actually the admiral of a fleet, and he perished when he went to help survivors or people south of Naples, right in the road of the eruption, effectively. And I presume that in this lovely image that this man here with the pencil is actually Pliny the Younger. And of course, it'll be based on a photograph. Meant to laugh. Right. All right, this is, let's think about the eruption. It was noted that there was a lot of earthquake activity beforehand. For days, weeks beforehand, there were lots of tremors. And this was just ignored by the locals in large part as being normal. All right. Then about midday on the 24th of August, this would have been seen. This is an artist's impression, obviously. In this image, by the way, there's a temple here and a temple here, two temples, and I know there'll be people here who are well versed in the classics. Apparently both of these temples was severely damaged in the earthquake activity in 62 AD. So they wouldn't have looked like that. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen the actual exhibition, but I presume many of you have, and you will find that there is a wonderful AV that presents to us in graphic form a reconstruction of the actual volcanic eruption. And I've gone to some bother to read the scientific basis, our scientific understanding of this eruption, and I have to say it is remarkably faithful. It's a really good treatment of what actually happened. Okay, so the eruption starts, and there are two phases to it. And the first phase lasts about 22 hours, and it's just pumping out voluminous pumice, essentially. And about 3 meters accumulated, between 2 and 3 meters of pumice just accumulated. People would have been able to survive all this, largely, except that they would not have been able to survive falling masonry or collapsing roofs or being hit by projectiles, because in amongst this material that's raining down, there would have been heavier objects, blocks of rock, and so on. So people would have been able to get away, and no doubt they did. And so they would have had about from midday on the 24th through to about 6 a.m. in the morning, that sort of order, to get out of the way of this incredible rain of sediment coming out of the sky, or pyroclastic material that's broken while hot. That's what pyroclastic means. And then the second phase kicked in, and the second phase lasted about 5 to 6 hours, and this was spectacular collapse of a very substantial eruption column, and that column was intense. Nobody would have survived it. In fact, just about everything within a radius of 10 to 15 kilometers of the summit was wiped out.